Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Robles and joined as always by my friend, David Sparks. How's it going, David?
Hello, Stephen. How are you today?
I am pumped. Our
Yeah.
outline is huge today because we're talking about smart home, and
Yeah.
I'm a nerd. I'm a smart home nerd.
Yes,
I
you
am.
are. You are. When you joined the show, I said one of the things I want to do is get you on the show talking about home, not HomeKit anymore, just Apple Home. I want to get
Right.
you on the show talking about that because for a variety of reasons. Number one, your expertise. Number two is I am struggling. I mean, I am really struggling right now with home automation.
Well,
Uh,
just in preparation for this episode, you started buying stuff, and I didn't even tell you to yet.
yeah, well,
So,
I've been doing some research. Before we get to that, I have a story to tell about that.
yeah.
But before we do, we have shown up in a great post on Obsidian.
So
Sort of.
on Blue Sky, someone tagged us. Stu Witt said they saw this in Wales, and we'll include a link to this image in the show notes. And if you're watching, he found a brew, I guess, in Wales called Obsidian.
Yeah.
And I don't know, we've got to figure out how to get sponsored by them, I think, David.
Yeah. Magic Dragon Obsidian. I feel like there could be a game out of this that you buy like a six pack of this, and
Oh.
every time we use the word Obsidian, you got to take a
You gotta
hit.
take a drink. You gotta take a drink. Well,
Yeah.
we should do that during if someone can listen to our bonus episode ranking the Star Wars. You
Yeah.
see that transition right there?
Oh, I love how you did that.
Thank you, thank you. And
Such a
that is,
pro.
exciting news. So our
Yeah.
Star Wars episode, our first monthly bonus episode, is out. You can listen to it right now if you're a More Power User member. We've called that bonus feed. It's on a separate feed. We're calling it MPU Pro Max, which I think is
Pro
pretty.
Max. I love
Which I
it.
think, I think it's pretty funny. And Stephen Hackett designed the artwork, which now has the 6 colors in the battery, which is pretty fun.
Yeah.
But if you already support the show, you have access to it. You might have heard us post about it earlier this week. We'll put a link in the show notes here and in the More Power Users episode on how to add that feed to your podcast player. And that's where those bonus episodes will be posted. And if you don't support the show already, you can get the ad-free version, get now the monthly bonus episode, which is our Star Wars ranking. We ranked our top 10 Star Wars movies and got through some difficult moments, but we did.
Yes, we
David.
did. Yeah.
I was afraid a couple times. We talked about The Last Jedi and it got intense. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I explained how that's the worst Star Wars movie ever made, and then Steven said how great it is. That's
Well, there's some nuance there. So
Yeah.
anyway, you
All
got
right.
to listen to it. It was a
All
great
right.
show. I had fun recording it.
Yeah, it was.
And yeah,
And for those that already subscribed, just to point out, this is a separate feed because of the way numbers work. But so you need to subscribe to a separate feed. And for those thinking about joining, Steven and I are committed. We're going to try and do one of these every month. And they're not going to just be like Star Wars. We're going to do some content, really serious-based ones. I think we're going to do one where I'm going to teach Steven how to use Keyboard Maestro, and
Yes.
we're gonna have a lot of fun with this stuff. So check it out if you're interested in joining. You get the ad-free extended version of the show every week, and you're going to get these monthly shows. We're saying monthly-ish because we might like take December off or something, but generally you're going to get a lot of extra content.
yeah, it's exciting. And if you do support for More Power Users, we have some Mac hardware stories. David maybe bought-ish an M5 MacBook Pro.
It's a long story. It's a
Okay,
long
great.
story.
That's great.
Yeah. All right.
So we'll get to that.
Okay.
But I'm really excited, David. Should we jump into smart home?
Yeah, we need to talk smart homes, but I need to set this one up a bit. So let me explain. Yeah. People listen to the show know that I've always been eager to get into the smart home stuff. We haven't covered it on Mac Power Users for a long time, and I have drifted, gang. I have drifted from the true path. So originally I set up all the smart home stuff using HomeKit back in the day. Like we had the camera on the dog crate, we have the camera on the front of the driveway in different places. And as we're going to talk about in the show, there's a lot of Apple Home stuff that I'm still using. But over the years, I drifted. Like I went into kind of the Eufy camera environment, which is a different app. I also have been playing with Home Assistant, which is kind of a different technology. And over the last 6 months, there have been a series of failures in my house that have been related to the fact that I got away from the true path. And, the thing about this is I live with other people. And the fact that I can make it do cool stuff with Home Assistant is not going to impress my wife, who just can't turn the lights on anymore, And so over the weekend, The neighbor where my street, the houses are on kind of like little hills, like the driveways are steep. And the neighbor across the street has a nice car, but for some reason the emergency brake failed. And his car rolled down his driveway across the street and crashed into my daughter's parked car in front of our house, you know? And, but it was unclear exactly what happened because my Eufy cameras failed. They did not do the job.
My word.
And to add to the insult to injury, my wife can't even get the Eufy app to work because it seems like the password resets every once in a while. Just a bunch of things. And then one of my neighbors, my Luddite neighbors, the one who I helped set up with HomeKit years ago, got his HomeKit camera to send us the video from HomeKit Secure Video. And it was humiliating for me as a nerd, but my wife just looked at me and said, this is enough. This used to work and it doesn't. Can you just please make it work again and do whatever that involves? And at the same time, I've been prepping this episode and I realized, Stephen, help me, Stephen Juan Kenobi. I think you're my only hope. I need to go back to HomeKit or Home. I keep forgetting that they've named it Apple HomeNet, but I need to go back to Apple and make stuff that everybody in the house can see and that just works. And so one of the things we're going to talk about this episode is bringing me back on the true path.
And we're going to talk about that, cameras, some useful automations that even my family members enjoy, and devices, especially newer ones that have come out. So my quick history, I've been all in on Apple HomeKit from the beginning. And I will link this YouTube video that I have on my channel where I do an annual smart home tour. And I go through all the devices and I talk about everything that I've got new and do just everything. And so I'll link that in the show notes. And I also have some updated videos I'll show. But I do all the things from garage door opener to locks to smart locks. But I've been all HomeKit forever. I dabbled in Homebridge a little bit in my old house because we got a security system from Vivint and they didn't work with Apple Home, obviously. And so I did have Homebridge running on a Mac Mini that bridged that camera and doorbell over, and even the alarm system, into HomeKit. And Homebridge has been fine. I have a Homey Pro hub to try and get some Zigbee devices in there. But overall, I always go back to straight Apple Home and now Matter devices because all the third-party stuff eventually breaks or requires endless updates, or sometimes the third-party service or app gets shut down. And Belkin actually used to make a number of smart home devices, from plugs to switches to even one of the few video doorbell cameras that worked with HomeKit, and Belkin has announced they're not doing their smart home devices anymore. Now, luckily, when a device is in Apple Home and has the HomeKit standard or Matter, whether a company goes under or not, that device will work in your Apple Home forever. And that's one of the benefits from using a third-party only type device, or heavily something like Eufy or maybe Arlo. We'll talk about those.
Yeah.
And Matter, which is the latest standard, which has allowed one device to be certified once and then be able to be used on all the ecosystems, Google, Amazon, and Apple, has allowed for way more devices and cheaper devices, which we'll get into a lot of specific devices on this episode, where you don't have to just buy the Apple HomeKit version. You can buy any Matter device, and it will work in Apple Home, and it's really seamless. And so there's show notes are going to be huge for this episode because I'm going to put a bunch of links to stuff. But Matter has really helped. And for me, for my setup, I have 4 Apple TVs, 15 HomePods, and most of them have Thread, which really helps with the whole smart home ecosystem. But I still run some hubs, namely Philips Hue, Aqara, Lutron, but all those devices are still in the Apple Home app. And we'll get into more as we talk about the different standards for different devices. But that's largely my setup.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that, a couple things. First of all, as soon as it's now that I've announced I'm going to try and go more pure kind of Apple Home, a bunch of you have probably already emailed me about why I don't appreciate the beauty of Home Assistant. And Home Assistant is very powerful. I totally agree. It does more than Apple Home. One of the tricks I was doing with my Home Assistant was the alarm on the refrigerator door in my house is the exact same pitch of my hearing loss. So I can be standing next to it and it can be going off. I won't hear it. So I put a thing where it would turn a light red in the bedroom and in the studio. So if I go and nosh at the fridge and then don't shut it. Then I see the light. Oh, I didn't shut the door. The other day, like this is another thing in the last month. This is another thing that led my wife to her breaking point. 2 a.m. The red light in the bedroom goes on. No idea why.
Like the Seinfeld episode with the chicken
Yeah,
place.
exactly. My wife's like, the neighbors are probably looking at our house right now thinking, what is going on?
Exactly.
So I turned it off. Then 4 o'clock, she wakes me up again. Hey, it's on again. The middle of the night, I go downstairs. I just literally unplug the home assistant and I turn the light off. And so I know that like things like this can do things that I can't do with Apple Home. But again, I think I need to simplify. So don't try and convince me. I think I want to just kind of go back to basics here. And I want the whole family to be able to use it. And that's something.
Yeah, and every video I post about smart home, there'll always be some comments saying home assistant. Sometimes the comment just says that and nothing else.
Yeah.
And like I understand there are some more powerful options there, but we're going to get into when we talk about automations through some shortcuts and some third-party apps. I've extended some HomeKit automations, but they're still very first party. And that's what I want to do. I want my back end to be the Apple Home, and maybe I'll extend it with this app here or a push notification there through PushCut, which is a great third-party app.
Yeah.
But I want my core as Apple Home, and that's everything. Because I also share it with 5 other family members. My wife, 4 others, my wife and 3 kids.
Yeah, and I feel like I want to follow the Robles model here. I want to get the most I can out of Apple Home, but I don't want to go into turning this into a hobby with something like Home Assistant, which really, having used Home Assistant for a couple of years, I'm well aware of what it can do. But I'm also well aware of how much time I spend updating the software and debugging advanced routines, and I don't want to do that anymore. So that's kind of the setting going into the show. I would like to take a minute, though, to drill down also on Matter and Thread and some of the technology we're talking about, because I think it's really confusing for people. Now, as I understand it, Matter is really a software stack. It goes on top of the hardware, and it is the handshake that allows you to take any device and use it with Apple Home or with Google or with Amazon or any of the popular home kind of control centers. Right?
Yeah, correct. And it's basically before, a company like Govee, which has made a lot of products in the last couple of years, before Matter, they would have to go through multiple certifications, certified with Apple HomeKit, Amazon Home, Google Home, and then they could go to market, which delayed the release of a lot of products.
Yeah.
Whereas Matter, which Apple actually contributed to this standard, so HomeKit is in there, Matter allows a manufacturer to get that certification, build for Matter, and then it opens the door to everything. And we'll talk about Thread in a moment because Thread is another technology in the smart home system. But Matter has allowed for a lot of devices, and this is one I actually just got recently, the Govee standing floor lamp. This is a Matter floor lamp, and I had the Philips Hue version of this, which I still have, and it's actually what's making the color behind me in our video.
Yeah.
And that standing floor lamp was like $350-ish when I bought it.
Yeah.
Where now a company like Govee can come in, make a very similar product. Actually, it's taller, and I find actually does just as well, if not better, than the Hue floor lamp.
Yeah.
The only difference is I had to assemble it when I took it out of the box, but it's $125. And so you can get cheaper products from more brands, and Matter allows that ubiquity now, or agnostic across smart home ecosystems.
Yeah. And the thing is, because they had to go to each different manufacturer, and Apple actually cares about security, Apple was the last one that they would always go to. That was like one of the things with my challenges with my Eufy. When I bought the doorbell, they said HomeKit compatibility is coming, and guess what? It never did. And that happened often with broken promises with this hardware because Apple, they actually have a security layer. Now, as I understand it, the Matter standard has that same security layer. That's why Apple was so involved. As I understand it, Matter stuff does not have to go out to the internet to work, which is really powerful. So this is a really good thing. It not only is making all these devices more secure and more convenient, it's also making a lot more devices available to people like Steve and I who want to use Apple Home.
Right. And one of the complications, though, of Matter is the Matter standard has to support a device category or feature first, and then the device manufacturers need to adopt that standard. So with something like robot vacuums, the Matter standard took a while. Robot vacuums then added Matter to some models.
Yeah.
And then Apple had to update iOS to support that version of Matter.
Yeah.
So there's still kind of a multi-step process for it. But just to rattle off a couple devices, and keep in mind, if you're building an Apple home ecosystem, when you see the Matter label, that's you. Get that.
You're
It's a
good.
good device.
Yeah.
It works with your thing. And now we have smart plugs where you can have a pack of 4 for like $45. You can have smart shades. I have multiple Matter smart shades. The Canasteo ones are great. Again, inexpensive. Robot vacuums now support Matter. Ecovacs has one. Roborock has one. And because it's Matter, you can just add it directly into the Apple Home app, scan the Matter code, and you're good. And even products like the Google Nest thermostat, which honestly is one of the best looking thermostats, I think. Ecobee looks really good as well. But because it's Matter, even Google's Nest thermostat can work in your Apple Home ecosystem. And one distinction, though, I want to make is that device and things like the Maris thermostat and the Ecobee, these are all Matter devices, but you'll see a distinction between Matter over Wi-Fi and Matter over Thread. Both of those things exist, and they both work in Apple Home. But as we'll talk about in a second, Thread is the newest, I would say, or best wireless standard for smart home devices that allow for fast response times, reliability, ease of setup. And if you have things like contact sensors that run on batteries, Thread allows longer battery life because it's not having to ping to the Wi-Fi or try to connect to Bluetooth devices. So Thread allows for better battery life as well. And so there's Matter over Wi-Fi and Matter over Thread.
Okay, so let's go down that little rabbit hole for a second. So if I talk about Matter as the software stack on top of everything, then you've got the communication protocol, I'll say, the radio. How does it talk? Now, in the old days, a lot of these were either Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. And I have generally found that Bluetooth is terrible for this stuff. It's not consistent. It doesn't hold a connection. And Wi-Fi can work, except Wi-Fi uses up bandwidth on your Wi-Fi network, which is not good, right? Like if you've got window switches in your house, you've got 20 windows. That's 20 things talking traffic on your Wi-Fi network. So much so that some people who do this create a separate Wi-Fi network just for their home automation stuff. Do you do that, Stephen, by the way?
No, I had that in my notes. I do not have a separate network for smart devices, nor do I separate out the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi bands. A lot of people do that. A lot of times internet service providers set up people's home Wi-Fi like that by default, and then they tell the homeowner, like, oh, just connect to the 2.4, just connect to this one, it's faster. And I would avoid all of that. I have one Wi-Fi network, one name, and that's it. All my devices are connected to it. And I will say, to your point, when you have a lot of Wi-Fi devices, you do find some of those devices become, a little sporadic in how they connect. An example that I use is I have a lot of Leviton light switches, which are Wi-Fi only. And then I have Lutron switches, which I'm slowly replacing all my switches to Lutron because Lutron requires a hub, but Lutron literally purchased their own frequency bands to use with their devices, and that is why the Lutron switches are so rock solid. And between those two, my Lutron switches never disconnect, never have an issue with response, whereas the Leviton switches, they'll occasionally say no, accessory can't be found, or have to do a Wi-Fi network reset on the physical switch. And so when you can, in certain areas, look for Thread, but also even some of these hub devices, you'll get a much better experience than Wi-Fi only devices.
Yeah. So to finish that thought, one of the answers is just don't get a lot of Wi-Fi devices in your home automation. And you talked about Thread. Thread is an alternative. That is a new one. And the way I understand that technology is if you have multiple devices, they actually, each one acts kind of as its own little Thread base. So the more you have, the better it gets. So it's just the opposite of the Wi-Fi problem.
And thankfully, there's a lot of Apple devices now. So step one, if you want to start an Apple smart home, you need either Apple TV or a HomePod or HomePod Mini.
Yeah.
And thankfully, if you get the high-end Apple TV, which is only $20 more than the base one, I don't know why they made that distinction, but the more expensive Apple TV has a Thread radio. The big HomePods have Thread and HomePod Minis, so they can all be your starting device for your Apple Home. And there's a difference between a Thread border router and then a just Thread device. A border router is needed for other Thread devices to connect to it, and then it can kind of manage those communications. But to make it practical, one other area where Thread devices are really helpful is when it's either out of Wi-Fi network range or maybe outside the house. And so one HomeKit device that I've used for a long time, I have an Eve Aqua, which is you connect your garden hose to it, and then it can either run your irrigation automations, or what I do is I have to fill my pool sometimes. And so I'll pull that in, and with the Apple Home app, I can say turn off after 2 hours of running, and that's an automation that can just run with this device. This has Thread built in, as compared to a different, same kind of device, but one from Maris, which is another garden hose thing, but this is Wi-Fi based, and even has a Maris hub, and the reliability and connectivity is nowhere near as good. And so for my outdoor devices, I've had people put contact sensors in their mailbox. This way they know when their mailbox opens and closes.
That's something I've been trying to do. I can never get it to work because my mailbox is 2 houses down, and it just never reaches.
And so you could try the Aqara P2 contact sensor, which is Thread, and it's Matter, so you don't need an Aqara hub. It works with Apple HomeKit. It's Thread, and it's helpful if you have a Thread border router near your window or near that part of your house where it can reach out to that contact sensor. And I have a HomePod near my front window, and I actually have a HomePod Mini out on my patio, which is given its life. Not that it's dead, but it just gets terribly dirty, and it's like outside, and you're not supposed to put HomePods outside, but it acts as a Thread border router for the stuff that's in my backyard too.
So if you're listening, you can probably tell this episode is going to cost me money because I'm trying to upgrade some of this stuff. But so we've talked about the Thread, which I think is so much better than using a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. But there's one other category, and just bear with us as we get through this underlying technology stuff, because I think it really informs the rest of the discussion. There are also vendors who kind of have their own. You talked about the Lutron Cassetta lights, where they've got their own frequency. You get their base station, and you're not really on Thread, you're not on Wi-Fi, you're on something else. You connect to your network, you go. As I understand it, is that the case too with Aqara?
So Aqara devices fall into two categories. Aqara has some devices that require a hub no matter what. An example is their water leak sensors, which I use. They're these little like $50 size sensors you can put under your sinks. I have one under every sink.
Yeah, me
that
too.
Requires,
I love those things.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
Yeah.
Again, links to all this stuff will be in the show notes, but I have those everywhere. So that requires an Aqara hub. There are other devices that Aqara has been making that is Matter and Thread or Wi-Fi that don't require a hub, like their new G400 video doorbell, which we're going to talk about in a second, and also their G5 camera, which you don't need an Aqara hub, and some of their devices, like that G5 camera, act as a hub. So they can, you can have an Aqara water leak sensor, and the G5 camera can be the hub they connect to, and that's all you need. You don't need another little box sitting in your network closet to actually have an Aqara network. But ones that do require it is Lutron. You need the Lutron hub no matter what, and you do need the Hue hub if you want your Hue devices in Apple Home. And I've used both Hue, the regular hub, and now the Hue Hub Pro. Migrating is a nightmare, just side note, because you have to reset all your Apple Home scenes. They don't carry over. But if you have any questions about that, leave it in the feedback or at me, and I can get you on the Hue stuff.
So I think we've got a good understanding now. So we've got, you've got the Apple kind of ecosystem around this stuff. You've got different radio technologies, which you want to be smart about what you get. I think the takeaway I have from my experiences over the last few years is I avoid Bluetooth like the plague, and Wi-Fi has to be really something I really need, and there has to be no other option for me to use Wi-Fi. And in general, I'm looking for Thread radio devices or things like Lutron, which kind of have their own thing going on. But using that better technology, I think, results in a much happier experience.
So again, thinking about if you're getting started or you want to add to your smart home, we want to draw the line between sensors, and HomeKit and Matter has a lot of different kind of sensors that then can play into automations, which we'll talk about later, and versus devices like a plug or a switch. And so when you come to sensors, I talked about the Aqara P2 sensor, and contact sensors are a way to tell if a door or window is open or closed. And
Yeah.
I use a lot of these around. My garage door has a contact sensor, all the doors in my house. And these are usually like little two-part sensors, so the little magnetic field will tell the sensor when it's closed or not. This is one of the Aqara devices where you don't need the hub. It's just matter, thread, and it just works right out of the box as with your Apple Home. So you have things like contact sensors, leak sensors, and then you can set up automations like when this door opens, turn on this light, or vice versa. There's also motion sensors from companies like Eve, Hue, and others. Presence sensors, which these are really cool. So recently, rather than motion, which let's say you're sitting reading a book and you want to set up an automation where if no motion, turn light off.
Yeah.
Well, if you're sitting there reading a book, the light's going to turn off on you.
Yep.
Well, a presence sensor actually uses wave, which are like the higher gigahertz frequencies, to detect just presence of a body. And there's actually a new Aqara sensor coming out where it can actually detect if someone's laying on the ground or if they have fallen or if they are standing up or sitting down. And now just think of the implications of you want to be able to detect if someone's laying on the ground in a room or if someone has fallen. In addition to the fall detection on Apple Watch, presence sensing is getting really advanced and fun for automations too.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest problem I always hear about whenever we talk about this on the show is someone writes me and says, look, I just want to make a thing where I walk in the room and the lights turn on when I come in and turn off when I leave. And I can't do that because like my wife is sitting there knitting and the lights go out and then all of a sudden I look like a bozo, you know, and I'm telling people these human presence sensors are the solution. That in the age-old problem of turn the lights on when I walk in, turn them off when I walk out, we have solved it now with these human presence sensors. And Aqara now makes one that's battery powered because the original ones were all USB powered. You had to plug it in somewhere, which limited where you could put it. But they've got a battery powered one. I just ordered one of those. I have not had one in my presence yet. I'm upgrading, guys. So, I'm like you. I'm spending money here. Steven, have you worked with that battery powered Aqara human presence sensor yet?
I have it right here in my studio. And
Yeah.
I have an automation where when it detects motion, or when it detects occupancy between like 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.,
Yeah.
it turns on my studio lights, and then when it stops detecting occupancy, it turns everything off.
Yeah.
It's battery powered, $50. This is again is a matter over thread, and so actually I said matter, but it is thread. But I think you do need the Aqara hub for this one.
Okay.
But just came out today as we record.
Okay.
Aqara released a new thermostat, the W200, which is matter, and it will work in your Apple Home, and it's a presence sensor.
Of course it is.
So this, I installed it. I'll link my video. I just did a video on this and some other devices. But if you put this in your living room or whatever,
Yeah.
not only can you now control the temperature in Apple Home and do your automations, this is a hub also, so it doesn't require a different Aqara hub. Then you can also set occupancy automations where when this thermostat detects occupancy, the lights are on. When it stops, the lights are off. And I've set up some if statements, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that it kind of watches for if this device is on or off, then run this automation or not. So you can kind of customize that, which why some people do Home Assistant and other third-party apps for that kind of stuff. If you get sophisticated with some if statements and sensors, you can do it directly in Apple Home too.
All right. So let's just take a little side trip here. If I buy one of these new Aqara P2 sensors and put it on my refrigerator door,
Yes.
what kind of if statement could I write to give me a notice that doesn't make it look like we just turned our bedroom into the red light district?
Wait a minute. Okay. Well, for your fridge, I will say, so one of my favorite automations, I have a mini fridge outside. I have the Aqara P2 contact sensor on it.
Yeah.
And one of the things Apple Home can't do natively is open door notifications.
Yeah.
Whereas if this door is left open for a certain amount of time. So I created a home automation converted to a shortcut, which is something you can do in the Apple Home app. And what it does is when that contact sensor is opened, so when your fridge is opened, it waits 60 seconds. So it waits a minute, and you can adjust that wait command
Sure.
to whatever time you want. And then it checks the status of that sensor. And then if that sensor is closed, it doesn't do anything. That means the door is closed again.
Sure.
But if the contact sensor is open, I get a notification that I've set up through the app Pushcut. It's an app
Sure.
free up to 3 notifications. And I'll get a notification that the door was left open.
Yeah.
And then you can add to that another check another minute later, or you can change the wake command. So you can have a contact sensor and get a door open notification just with the home app and an app like Pushcut, or Burr is actually another new app for these kinds of notifications, BRRR. I'll link that in the show notes too.
But to go to Pushcut because it's made by my friend Rosemary. So
I didn't know that, honestly. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I love Pushcut. I do battery notifications through that, so if my iPad falls below 20%, I get a push notification. I do all that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe you just saved my marriage. I don't know.
I also I even have automations. We'll save it for later. But I have stuff where my kids leave lights on randomly throughout the house, and so I have an automation that runs at 2 a.m. to just shut all the lights off.
Yeah, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Just
and if someone's up and awake,
if
someone's awake at 2 a.m., they should be scared. They should be scared. And also other sensors, by the way, and again, all of these sensors can be automated: light, humidity, and temperature, and even things like the home pods now have temperature and humidity sensors built in that are surfaced in the home app that you can automate. So if the temperature is over these degrees, turn on the ceiling fan. All of that's built in. And there's some multi-sensor things like a camera. So if you get a HomeKit Secure Video camera, which we'll talk about, that acts as a motion sensor as well. So you can set up automations for when motion is detected from a camera. You don't need a dedicated motion sensor device.
So we talked about lights, but let's have the conversation anyway. I am a big fan of Lutron Cassetta, as are you. And while they're a little bit of money, it takes time to kind of replace the switches. When I did it, they were, I don't know, $50 to $100 a pop, just kind of depending on what you were doing. But I spent like a year and a half, just like every month I'd buy another one. And now my whole house is Lutron Cassetta out. And installing those, 4 years ago was the last time I ever thought about it because they just work. There's a switch in the wall and you push the button and the lights go off and on normally, but they also can be fully automated. I'm a big fan of that over light bulbs because light bulbs, even the LEDs eventually go out, and it's just very much a hassle because let's say you set up a bunch of light bulbs and somebody turns off the switch on the wall, they don't have power anymore, so they don't work anymore. I just feel like the case is really easy. If you want to automate lights, spend the money, get the Lutron Cassetta, and do it at the switch level.
That's how I do it. I have a lot of people that will write to me asking about rental situations. And so if you do rent, that is a situation where you probably don't want to switch out light switches or maybe not be allowed to. And so bulbs would be an option for that, putting it in lamps and things like that. When it comes to bulbs, there are some thread bulbs out there, but I found the most reliable bulb solution is Philips Hue bulbs. They have, ambient white. They have color LED bulbs. And those are good, but for me, I want to switch out the light switch because the other complication with bulbs is someone might physically turn the switch off or click the lamp off, and now that smart bulb is disconnected and you can't control it. Yeah. So I always err on the side of a switch or a dimmer. And Lutron is still expensive, but they have two newer models, the Diva dimmer and the Claro switch, and they look just like normal paddle switches. Yeah. So if the last time you looked at Lutron switches was a long time ago, they had kind of these multiple buttons with little icons everywhere. That's not the case. You can get Lutron switches now that look just like normal switches, a little dimmer track on the right where you can, slide it up and down. It is like $70. I think the Claro is like $65. But like you, I've just been slowly switching them out. And there are some good thread over matter switches and dimmers. Eve makes one. I actually have it here in the studio, an Eve switch. And they're good. But Lutron is just rock. It's so rock solid that I want all my switches there because I never want to think about it again. And that's, I think, the difference between like Home Assistant and trying to set it all on Apple Home. Like, do you want to think about your smart home, or do you want to just set it and forget it and it just do the things you want? And I want to set it and forget it. And that's why I do the Lutron and stay in Apple Home.
Yeah, if you live with other humans, they expect when they push the button that the light goes off or on. That's
the thing.
And with the Lutrons, you get that 100% of the time. It's just that's
exactly. And that's why so we talked about sensors. Going into other things, the switches are one. You can do smart plugs, which I talked about, some Maris ones, and that's something you could put on the end of a lamp. And I would do that before the bulbs personally, because the switch is going to stay in the outlet no matter what. So even if someone clicks off the lamp, you might be frustrated because you can't turn it back on from the switch, but it won't show that the device is disconnected, and then it might, see in your home app that you can't access it. So I prefer the plugs over the bulbs, and if you're a renter, that would work for you as well.
Do they make dimmer plugs? Like if somebody wanted to hook it up to a light bulb, could they vary the amount of current going into it to make it like soft or bright?
Lutron made one like that years ago. I don't think they do it anymore. There was like no ground on the outlet, and I think it was very specific use case. But I don't think you can do it anymore. There are some like in-wall smart home devices, so like not the switch, but literally like the behind part. You can switch that out, but I don't think you can get a dimming plug right now.
Yeah, but for those now, do you recommend? Like, is there any specific brands that are like Thread, Matter? I mean, you kind of want to look for the best technology for this stuff right now if you're getting into it.
For like the bulb specifically?
Or no, for the plug.
Oh, for the plug, yeah. Just get something Thread and Matter. The Maris has one. Eve makes a lot of great products. They have an Eve Energy, which is Thread and is Matter, but it also does more things like energy monitoring, which is not, and this is one of the things we'll get into in a minute. The Eve energy monitoring is not a home-specific feature or Matter feature. So you don't see in the home app that data. You do have to go to the Eve third-party app to see the energy from that specific device. But if that's something that's interesting to you, you can set up an automation in the Eve app, and maybe you have like a deep freezer in the garage, and if for whatever reason it stops working, well, you can have that Eve energy tell you if there's no current flowing to this device, and now you have a notification if your deep freezer died, as opposed to just a smart plug, which can't tell you that kind of information. So depending on your use case, that might be valuable to you.
Yeah, and I should have said that at the top when we were talking about the underlying technology, but the Matter means it works in Apple Home. You don't need to use their app. However, and there's a big asterisk there, a lot of times there's additional features if you go in the app.
And we're going to talk about, I've mentioned Aqara a lot, but they've honestly been making a lot of the great devices recently. But I'll just say it now. They are building more and more features directly in their app and using their hubs that are not in Apple Home. And an example is I just got their new video doorbell. Yeah. And when you ring it, the video, or at least a screenshot of the video, can show up on the thermostat. Which is a cool feature. Ecobee had that as well, but you need the Ecobee doorbell and the Ecobee thermostat, and that is not a Apple Home feature or even a Google or Amazon feature. That's specifically to the brand. So you have to have an Aqara doorbell and the Aqara thermostat and use the Aqara app to set that up. And that is one of the features, and there are many others, even things like 2K video resolution, which we'll get into, that are brand and app specific that are not in the Apple Home or Matter standard just yet. So there are distinctions there.
You want to go into doorbells now since you've raised it?
Let's talk about doorbells.
All right.
So one thing about doorbells, there's not a lot of options out there for HomeKit Secure Video.
Yeah.
And this is a distinction that if you've not heard that phrase, HomeKit Secure Video is Apple's video storage solution that you get as part of your iCloud Plus subscription or your Apple One bundle. So if you pay for iCloud storage, you get HomeKit Secure Video as a feature, meaning if you get a video doorbell that supports it, the recordings are in the Home app, saved there, and you don't have to pay another subscription to a brand for the video recordings. So as an example, my mom, there weren't good wireless video doorbells out there that were HomeKit Secure Video, so I got her the Arlo video doorbell, which is wireless, but she has to pay the Arlo subscription. It's like $5 a month, but she has to pay Arlo for the recordings for the last 30 days and access those on the web and in the app. HomeKit Secure Video means what I pay Apple for iCloud storage, I get everything for the security video, and that's all the cameras I have in my house. I have probably 8 different cameras around, and they're all HomeKit Secure Video, including my new doorbell, which I'll just be honest, I really love it. It is the new Aqara G400, and it is Thread, it is Matter, it is HomeKit Secure Video, and for the first time, you can get power over Ethernet in a video doorbell. And that's something a lot of people, this is why they went to Ubiquiti and to other brands, but you can now get that now in this device. It looks pretty good. It is way better than my Logitech Circle View. You can do power over Ethernet. You can do a standard wiring, which is what I have. You can do that. It comes with a chime. So if you want a chime somewhere in the house powered by USB-C, you can do that. And it works incredibly well. And so Aqara has this option. There's also Aqara has wireless options. And the only other option besides these Aqara ones that are HomeKit Secure Video is the Logitech Circle View, which is so old. I don't think you can even buy it anymore. It's not on Amazon anymore. You can probably still get it at an Apple store, but don't do it. It's too old. It doesn't have the latest Wi-Fi standards. And one other thing is this G400 actually has 2.4 and 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi in addition to all the other stuff. So setting it up, speed of accessing the live stream in the home app, accessing your recordings, everything is super fast. And lastly, sorry, I'm really excited about this video doorbell. It has a micro SD card slot. So if you want to record those things, so when your neighbor's car ran down the thing, even if HomeKit pooped out and you didn't have access to the recordings that way, you can have a micro SD card in here and recording 2K video footage locally to that card that you could just pull out and import. And it's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, so let's talk about the video camera storage situation. Like all of these vendors have a service, it's usually $100 a year in that neighborhood of, hey, we're going to store your video for you for 30 or 90 days and you just pay us every year. And that's part of the model for them. Like they want, they lose money on the razor, make money on the razor blades. And they want you to sign up for it. But like even with Eufy, they had a security compromise and it's not clear whether it was intentional or not. I don't know. But, the screenshots were getting sent to their servers from the cameras. And that was a big deal. A couple of years ago, a bunch of listeners really gave me a hard time about it because at the time I had some Eufy cameras. The thing about HomeKit Secure Videos, I kind of trust Apple implicitly on this, that's not going to happen. It doesn't, not only does it not cost you money, I feel like it's a more secure way to like actually get recordings. And maybe we'll talk in a minute, but I don't really want recordings inside the house anyway, but I think outside the house, they can really make a lot of sense. But that I think is a big point about HomeKit Secure Video people don't make. But then there's the downside, and that's the resolution.
The resolution and the controls. And so in all the links that I put for the show, I'm going to put multiple cameras because you can have cameras inside and outside that are all HomeKit Secure Video. And just to rattle off a few, I mentioned the Aqara G5.
Yeah.
You can do power over Ethernet or Wi-Fi. It's HomeKit Secure Video. It's about $200, but it's a great camera. You can get the Topo. This camera is actually great, and it is $35. I actually use this on my patio, and this is actually a pan and tilt camera up to 2K resolution. But this is where the limitations of HomeKit Secure Video come in. It uses HomeKit Secure Video, so you get the recordings in iCloud in the Home app.
Yeah.
But the Home app doesn't have controls for pan and tilt. So you have to use the Topo app if you want to be able to move the camera. And HomeKit Secure Video max resolution is 1080p. And so the fact that Apple hasn't upgraded the 1080p resolution is kind of wild. I'm really hoping at WWDC this year, and I've said it for the last 4 years, that they upgrade that to 4K. But you can get the Topo camera. It's 2K pan and tilt, HomeKit Secure Video. Yeah. Eve has great outdoor cameras that are floodlights. These are HomeKit Secure Video. You add it right to the Home app. I have one of these on a barn. And even Eve has a great HomeKit Secure Video camera. This one's 1080p, but again, there's lots of options out there for cameras. You can do power over Ethernet now, both for your video doorbell and outdoor cameras like the G5. Use HomeKit Secure Video everywhere and not pay another subscription and not trust a third party with your video recordings.
Yeah. So my inclination as I'm resetting my system is to just go with HomeKit Secure Video cameras. I'm very interested in that. Was it the G5 or is it G4? G5. That one looks like a great camera. And I do have one area where power over Ethernet is feasible for me, other areas where it wouldn't. However, just like the Home Assistant Mafia has already come for me, I'm going to hear from the Ubiquiti people next because my old pal Stephen Hackett is a 100% believer in Ubiquiti cameras. I know several friends and nerds who are listeners who are also super into them. So that's a question I have. If I'm going to start making some changes, I'm going to spend some money. Why don't I just buy Ubiquiti cameras? I have a Ubiquiti Unify network here. So I've got kind of everything I need to just plug into it. But I'll tell you the thing that's bugging me is I just want it accessible to my wife. I don't want her to have to go on another app. And like a lot of the automation stuff that I want to play with the stuff really requires that it be in Apple Home. So I'm probably going to just get some of these G5s and use those. But that's another kind of question that I think a lot of people can ask. If you're all in on Unify and you want to use their cameras, that's great. But they don't natively work with Apple Home. And I don't really want to monkey around with some way of trying to get them to work and have to deal with the points of failure that come with that.
And I'll say I'm all in on Ubiquiti Unify for my network. That's what powers everything, and I love their stuff. And I think up until now, one of the big reasons people wanted to do the Ubiquiti cameras is power over Ethernet, or just Ethernet in general, because it's a much more reliable connection. But I would say now that we have power over Ethernet and Ethernet devices, and to be clear, the G5 camera, you can use it with Ethernet and still power it via USB-C. So if you don't have power over Ethernet specifically, you can still connect it via Ethernet. I think it has been incredibly reliable. The video feed is super fast to load in the Home app, and it is never disconnected. I mean, I've had it set up for months now. And so now that you can get power over Ethernet, and there's more Matter devices being introduced, even shades. I actually got these SmartWings shades that have power over Ethernet. And so you can have your smart shades that way if you never want to deal with charging and you want to have a hardwired Ethernet connection to your smart shades. You can do that too.
It's kind of nuts, when you say
it is kind of nuts. And like now, in retrospect, if I knew this was where we would be today, I would have ran Ethernet everywhere when we built this house 5 years ago. I would have run it to my doorbell. I would have run it to every window frame. Then I could have had just a little tiny Ethernet cable going to the shades and never think about connectivity or whatever. But that's one of the reasons. And lastly, about the Ubiquiti, one of the other big reasons people do it is because they want to store their video footage locally, like on the hard drive in their closet. And totally get it. Like if that's what you want to do, there's still options for you. Like some of the cameras allow you to upload videos via like FTP or sometimes network attached storage servers. So sometimes you can do that, but you can also do the micro SD card on the G5, on the new video doorbell. And it's not like the servers that you would have set up with Ubiquiti, but it is an option. And for people like you and I, where I have other family members that access the cameras and they don't want to use another app and just be easy, I think the current HomeKit options, Apple Home options, are pretty good.
Yeah, and just for clarification, I'm sure some people don't understand power over Ethernet. It's a special networking kind of protocol. Basically, you can run power over your Ethernet cable. Ubiquiti Unify Gear supports this. So if you get one of these PoE cameras from Aqara, there's just an Ethernet port on the cable, and you plug into that. That gives it power, but it also gives it a wired connection to the camera itself, so you don't have to worry about like Wi-Fi failing or it not being able to communicate. So it's a very stable way to do it. The downside, of course, is you've got to run an Ethernet cable anywhere you want that camera to work. And for those of us with older houses, that's not necessarily trivial.
I was able to run Ethernet when the house was at the stud phase, and I could have done it. I still kick myself.
I just built this studio 3 years ago, and I could have done this. Well, I do have some Ethernet in here, but I don't have it going to the outside camera points,
Right, and that's, again, there were no Ethernet HomeKit secure video cameras when we did it, so I didn't think there was a need. But
well, I guess if you're listening, you're about to build a house, you're going to buy a lot more Ethernet cable. The bill is going up as we go through this show. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to buy yet. Definitely going to get a G5 camera, probably a PoE one as a test. And so we're going. But now, Stephen, let's talk about the front door. How we're going to unlock. So I have a Eufy smart lock there with a fingerprint sensor that the family is happy with. It has a camera in it, which is a nice feature, which is inconsistent. And I'm ready to move on. Where do I go next?
So once again, Aqara has not sponsored this or anything I've ever done, but they just make some great devices. They're now first to the market with the Aqara U400 ultra wideband lock. So I have this. I did a whole video on it, but it has the fingerprint sensor, has the PIN code for unlocking. It has Apple Home Key. And if you didn't know, Apple Home Key is where you can just tap your Apple Watch or your iPhone and it will unlock the door. You can just do that. But this one also has ultra wideband, meaning you can just approach the door and it will unlock via proximity. Yeah. And in my testing, it'll work about 8 to 5 feet away. You can tell the Apple Home app, you don't need the Aqara app for this, you can tell the Apple Home app only unlock when I approach from the right, the left, forward, or all three, or any combination of that. And you just, your groceries are full, you're holding, grocery bags, and it will just unlock just by proximity. And it will even unlock faster if it detects you are running.
Yeah,
So I was at
cool.
CES. It's wild. I was at CES and there were guys testing this. And if it detects fast approach, it will unlock sooner at like 10 to 15 feet. This way it's unlocked by the time you get to the door. So Aqara has this lock. It is the one I would recommend if you want fingerprint, if you want the PIN code, which my kids like the PIN code because they might not have their Apple Watch or, my youngest don't have phones.
Yeah.
So it has all of that. What were you going to say?
No, that's great.
Oh, yeah. And I will mention, if you don't want that, or if you don't care for the ultra wideband and you want maybe an inexpensive lock, Thorbolt is actually a great brand. I've had multiple of their models. The X1, it has a pin pad, has a fingerprint sensor, works with Apple Home, and has Thread. It is really reliable, really fast, and it still works with Home Key, so you can tap your Apple Watch or iPhone to it, and it will unlock. There's also an X3 version that's even cheaper without the fingerprint scanner if you don't want that. And so Thorbolt makes some great ones. Aqara, the Schlage Encode Plus, another one with a PIN code, Home Key, and Thread. And I'll mention Level Lock too, because if you want a smart lock that doesn't look like a smart lock, Level Lock is the way to go. It's the one that looks most just like a normal lock, but it is very expensive. It's like $300. I think the new Level Lock Pro is $330. It uses Home Key, so you can just tap your watch. It has NFC, so you can program NFC cards and keychain tags, and you can tap it to the lock and it'll unlock. It looks really nice. I did a whole video on that as well. I still have one set up on one of my doors, but it is very expensive. And for me, I might put that on my front door, but I use the Aqara ultra wideband on a patio door. I use the Thorbolt on my garage room utility door, and I do all of that. And
I think ultra wideband is the same technology they're using for the car unlock and the car stuff.
Correct.
My car got that like 3 months
Oh.
ago. Yeah. And I can tell you it has not failed once. Because my car came with like a little card you carry in your wallet because the original connection, I think it was Bluetooth. It wasn't the ultra wideband. And, like 9 out of 10 times it worked fine. And then the 10th time you'd be standing next to the car waiting for it to unlock and it just wouldn't. And you have to pull the thing out of your wallet. I'm so tempted to not carry that card anymore because it's just never failed. And I suspect you'd get the same thing with the door. So if I put one of these in, the whole thing is like you just want your wife to be happy, right? It's like she comes home with the groceries, she's got her phone in her purse, the door unlocks, nothing further. It seems like that's an easy upgrade.
It is, and it's also smart enough to know what side of the door you're on.
Yeah.
So this is one thing where a Level Lock, it worked. It did have proximity unlock, but it worked over Bluetooth. And like you said earlier, Bluetooth is not great for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
But one of the issues with the Level Lock is if you walked by it inside the house, it might unlock because it thinks you're approaching. It doesn't know what direction you're coming from.
That's not good.
That's not good.
Guys at the front door and you walk up to the door to look through the peephole and the door unlocks.
Exactly. And so the Aqara ultra wideband one knows what side of the door you're on. And I tested it multiple times. You can walk on the back side of that door and it will not unlock. It won't unlock because it knows you're inside. It will stay locked. And it even has some of the settings you have to go to the Aqara app for. It has like double entry settings. So if you have like a screen door or other door that's like a couple feet from your main door, you can tell it that and it'll know how to work it all out. So yeah, the Aqara one's really good with the ultra wideband. And I also want to mention, just a side note, talking about entryway, I also have a garage door opener.
Yeah.
And this one has been complicated for a lot of people because the Chamberlain garage door openers, they've been working very hard to make it impossible to use smart home devices with their engines because they want you to pay for like the My Chamberlain subscription or whatever to open your garage, which is
everybody wants to monetize.
Yeah, everybody wants to monetize. So Maris really makes the only one that I would say is worth getting. So this is the version that I have. It works with my Genie motor. If you don't have one of the newer My Chamberlain ones, this one will probably work with yours. It's $50. It works over Wi-Fi. It doesn't have any of the newer technologies, but it's actually really reliable. It works. I've had it for years. But Maris also just released this newer version. It's a little more expensive, but it's specifically made to work with the pain in the neck motors, like from Chamberlain and LiftMaster. And so if you have one of those newer garage door motors and it doesn't work with like the hard wiring options, you can try this new one from Maris, and they're trying to get around it too. So we'll link that.
Could you also just like get an IR blaster or something to just send the signal? Like,
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can. I mean, I think even my car, I could program that kind of stuff in. But if you have CarPlay, one of the nice things is when you enter a 1 mile radius of your home, your garage door control just appears on the CarPlay.
yeah,
And you can literally just tap it to open and close your garage. I open and close my garage a lot from my watch. If I'm walking outside to take the trash out or whatever, I'll say close the garage, open the garage.
yeah.
And it's really reliable. And IR Blaster might work. I don't know how you would get that in HomeKit, maybe with a smart plug, but I would do the Maris one. It's a pain in the neck. You do have to run a contact sensor, so you have to run a cable from your motor that Maris gives you in the box all the way down to your garage door somewhere, so the contact sensor knows when the door is open or closed. So that's a pain in the neck. You have to be on the ladder for a while, but you do that once and you're done. And I did that.
Well, the good news in my house is what used to be called the garage is now called the shop. And the garage door does not get open very often, so I'm not super into that. But I think another edge case people run into often is ceiling fans. Like, how do I get a ceiling fan on HomeKit?
You can do that too.
Have you cracked that nut yet, Steven?
Yes, I have all my ceiling fans are in HomeKit. There's one switch, guess from who? Lutron. And once again,
of course.
But they have a ceiling fan control switch. They never updated the design, so it still looks like the older style Lutron switches with like the actual fan icons and stuff like that. But this works with fans. You do have to be careful of your model fan, because a lot of fans now come with remotes in the box, and they want you to control the light and the fan from the remote and not a switch. And so you need a fan that is made to be wired to 2 separate switches. So the light part of the fan would be on one switch, and I put those on Lutron dimmer switches. And then the fan part needs to be on a second switch, namely this smart fan control. And you have to work with, if someone's installing it for you, if you're installing it, sometimes the fans have a module specifically for the remote, and you might have to specifically not install that part so the fan works with dual switches. But maybe ask the people at Lowe's, Home Depot, or wherever you're buying it. Or I might try to find my fan that I've used all over the house that works with this. But the Lutron Caseta one is the way to do the ceiling fans.
All right. We haven't talked much about robot vacs, but that is now a thing with HomeKit, right?
That is the thing with HomeKit. I do not use robot vacuums in the Home app, mostly because you don't have all the options that you still get in the Robots app, namely like room-specific cleaning. Sometimes it could work, sometimes not. The kind of cleaning. So I have robot vacuums and mops, and there's like vacuum level intensity, there's mop level intensity, and a lot of different settings. And so even though I have all the smart home things, when it comes to robot vacuums, I just use the robot vacuum app. And I know we just talked about this brand in a negative way, but my favorite recent robot vacuum and mop that I've been using is actually the Eufy Omni S2. It is a roller style mop. So it's not the circular mop pads that spin. Yeah. This actually has a roller, and it's pretty fast, and it's pretty good. Now, this was given to me by the brand for like a sponsored video in the past. They did not sponsor this, but I've got a lot of robot vacuums from a lot of sponsors. I have Dreamy, I have D-Bot, the EcoVacs, Narwhal. Narwhal's pretty good. I do like them as well, but this has been my current favorite for robot vacuums and mops.
Yeah, and I don't have a thing against Eufy, but my cameras are like 5 years old, and they're all kind of just falling apart. And like I was thinking about this morning, my parents lived in the same house like 40 years till they died. Yeah. You know how many doorbells they had the whole time?
One.
Yeah, it's like, this is the thing. If you get into this, it's like you're not going to buy one and have it for 40 years. It's going to be a thing you upgrade. And I'm just in that cycle now where a bunch of stuff needs upgrading, and the experiment of trying to run a camera system outside of Home app has just kind of been a failure with the rest of my family. If I lived alone, maybe I would be better off, but it's I wouldn't be better off, but you know what I mean.
Right. But I don't want to fiddle with it either. And one of the things about HomeKit secure video cameras in the Home app, you have controls, permissions with the users that you add to your Apple Home, including can this person view the live stream and the recording, just one or the other, or none.
Yeah.
And so you can add people to that. And Apple Home has actually added the ability to add guests that are not in your iCloud family, but that you might want to give access to a door lock, like we've been talking about, or even your garage door. And you can even give them permissions on a schedule. So if someone just has access to the door lock on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., you can do that. And there's a lot of permissions that the Apple Home app now just handles that you don't need third-party apps for. And I appreciate, as much as I like complex automations, I like not thinking about them once I've set them up, and the Apple Home app allows for that.
Yeah, we had that happen once my sister got to the house like 15 minutes before we did, and I just unlocked the door for her so she could go in, and that is really nice. So have we hit all the hardware at this point, Steve? Any other categories we've missed?
We've hit a lot of hardware. Let me just rattle off some devices that I think are fun.
Okay.
And one that I just set up yesterday.
Wait, let me get my credit card out before you start.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, please do.
Go ahead.
So one device, I just got it yesterday. HomeKit buttons has been a thing. And when we talk about family using your smart home, I actually try to get buttons. So like my kids, my daughter, she has her fan light, HomePod, and a lamp in her room, and they're all in HomeKit in the Apple Home app.
Yeah.
And controlling it, she can yell at the HomePod Mini, but sometimes it doesn't understand her, and that can be frustrating. And so I like HomeKit buttons, and there's been various models over the years, but they've all been a little wonky. Like sometimes they disconnect, they take coin batteries you have to change out every 6 months.
Yeah.
And so this new one is from Air Versa. It's a brand that also makes like air purifiers, but this is a HomeKit button. It's Thread. So it works with Apple Home. It's not Matter. It's Apple Home specific, but it has Thread. So connectivity is great. It's reliable, works fast. And the best part is it doesn't take a coin battery. It's rechargeable. So you can recharge it over USB-C, and then you don't have to worry about coin batteries. Has 3 buttons, and each button can be programmed as a single press, double press, or long press. So you can actually program this one little remote to have 9 different functions. And it even comes with a little wall plate. So if you want to put it on the wall, it'll magnet attached to the wall plate, and then you can pick it up and take it with you as a remote. And this kind of stuff, this is how I want to be doing buttons going forward. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I on the button category, I'm a fan of the Aqara buttons. Again, as long as you have one of their hubs, they're not expensive and they're super useful. And I use it the same way. You've got 3 presses. Once double press and long press, and so I've got one under my desk as I'm sitting here, and I can set the studio lighting just by tapping underneath the desk. I've got one by the door that doesn't have a light switch. I've got one in my nightstand at night. I take eye drops every night. I have to keep my eyes closed, so I can like set the lights off and on without having my eyes open using just one of those little buttons. But a 3-rigged button giving me 9 options. Well,
Exactly.
That one's going to get ordered.
And well, there you go. And so now I'll actually go quick. So I do use the Philips Hue sync box and light strip to sync stuff to my TV, and there's lights behind my TV.
Oh, yeah, that's a thing, right? You put the light strip behind your TV, and it reflects whatever's on the TV.
And I think it's super fun. And so I'll put a link to my video in the show notes, but I do it. And whenever we watch a fun movie like Mario Brothers or something like that, like it's fun to have the lights syncing behind the TV.
Yeah, and that is like it's not a small investment to put that in, but if you like movies, I think that's something that really adds a bit, doesn't it?
It does, and there are other. I use the Hue one, but Govee has an option too that's cheaper, and so you could try theirs, and it would probably still work pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, now actual lightning round. There's a little table lamp from Maris that can change colors. That's pretty fun. It's inexpensive. The more expensive Hue Twilight lamp, I have this on my nightstand and really like it. You can change multicolors. It actually has a light from in the front and shines to the back, so it can reflect off your wall and color that. But it also has 2 buttons on top, so those can be surfaced in HomeKit in the Apple Home app, and you can actually program those two buttons to like run scenes and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool.
And just to think about it, like if you have a light where you can set the color to the light, that becomes a communication device from your home automation. Like
exactly,
if the Dodgers win, it turns blue, or whatever. If the refrigerator's open, it turns red.
Yes.
But getting one or two of those, you can find interesting uses for them.
Absolutely. So that's the Twilight lamp. I have an Eve flare. It's actually behind me in the video. It's the little round ball that glows.
Yeah.
And it's actually rechargeable, so you can carry it with you, bring it outside, and do fun stuff with. So the Eve flare is fun. The Govee floor lamp I mentioned before. I also have a light strip behind my headboard in the bedroom, and it actually makes for really nice lighting when it's late at night because you don't have to have the top lights or canned or ceiling fan lights on, and it's kind of this back glow, and it's easy on the eyes. So Govee makes a great light strip.
Those are also really good under kitchen cabinets.
Yes. And I actually have a kitchen cabinet light in all the links too, the GE Sync Plus, I believe. I have those under my kitchen cabinets. This is also cool. This is a Leviton scene controller. It is only Wi-Fi, which is unfortunate, but what's cool is this replaces a light switch, and the bottom button is the light switch. So you can turn the light on and off via that bottom button, and then the top three buttons are HomeKit buttons. So you can actually have those programmed scenes, and now you have a hardware switch plus three other controls that you can run anything or just control a single Apple Home device, whatever you want, but it's then in your wall wired, and it's pretty cool. I use one of those. And then it was the HomeKit button. So that's some fun devices, and links to all the stuff down in the show notes. That'll all be there.
I'm going to have to really sell a kidney after we finish this one.
Well, last thing I wanted to do, I wanted to just mention some automations that I have that I find, because people are wondering, like, well, what is the purpose of a smart home? What can you even do that matters? Matter, pun intended. But anyway, so these are just a few of my automations that I run. Number one, my master bathroom has like 6 switches. There's like the vanity light, the exhaust fan, the shower light, closet light, toilet room fan.
Yeah.
So there's 6 switches. And when someone's leaving the bathroom, if they turn off the vanity, chances are they're leaving the bathroom and I want all the lights off.
Yeah.
And so one of the automations you can do is when an accessory is controlled, namely when a switch is turned off, do this. And what I have it do is turn off all 6 switches at once. So when I leave the master bathroom, click one switch and everything in the master bathroom turns off without having to go around to every switch. That's pretty fun. And even more, go ahead.
I'm thinking about in my bathroom, because of the human presence sensor works so well, but we have to kind of walk through the bathroom to get to the toilet. And if you get up in the middle of the night, I can see the way the architecture is. You could actually put a human presence sensor that doesn't face the actual bedroom. So I was thinking maybe I'll get one of those. So if she walks through the bathroom at night, the lights go on dim. And then when she leaves, they go back off. I think that would be a clever use of one of those human presence sensors.
I think that would be a great use. And in another bathroom one specifically, we have a window in our bathroom, and I have a smart shade on it. Yeah. And whenever someone takes a shower, they want the shade closed.
Yeah.
And because we also have 2 big windows in our master bedroom, which connects to the bathroom, and so you can kind of see in that way.
Yeah.
So I have when an accessory is controlled, namely the exhaust fan in the bathroom, which is something everyone's going to turn on when they take a shower, you turn that on, all the shades close in the master bedroom and the bathroom.
Yeah.
And the ceiling fan turns on in the master bedroom because sometimes you're hot when you get out of the shower. We live in Florida. And so all the shades close, ceiling fan turns on, and that automatically happens when you turn on the exhaust fan. So that's pretty fun.
Last time I looked into the automated shades, they were just really expensive and they didn't seem that good. Have they got better at this point?
They've gotten much better. Again, you can get matter over thread shades, and I'll link these, but I would get the Canasteo. That's what I have in my bathroom. Yeah. And I've tried them all. And a lot of them are rebranded they're like the same shade, just rebranded. But Canasteo is pretty inexpensive depending on your window size. It's been reliable. I have to charge it once every 6 months. It has a little USB-C port. You can get a solar panel and a USB, to keep it charged via that if your window faces the sun. But I love the smart shades. And that's one of those cool automations where an hour after sunset, all my shades close. Yeah. And then an hour at sunrise, all the shades open around the house. And so I have that. Pretty much every window in our house has that. And the last automation I'll mention, my kids' bathroom, it's got 3 switches, vanity, shower light, exhaust fan. And my kids always leave those on all the time. And and the kids' bathroom is like right across our little family room from my office. And so if they leave the exhaust fan on, I hear it. And so I have to turn it off. And so I have a contact sensor, a Akara P2 on the door. And whenever it detects the door opens, so the act of opening, it waits 10 seconds and then turns everything off. And the only time it would detect the doors opening is if someone had it closed and has now opened it. And 99% of the time, it means one of my kids was in the bathroom and they're getting out. And so now every time someone leaves the bathroom after the door being closed, everything in that bathroom shuts off 10 seconds later, and I don't have to worry about the exhaust fan running all day.
Okay, so you're pulling that off with shortcuts?
Yeah. Well, no, it's actually just built in.
Okay.
So you can do when a sensor detects something, when a door is opened, and I have a wait 5 seconds command, and then turn off all the things. Or wait 10 seconds, turn off all the things. So that's just built in.
Yeah, the part that I'm confused though is like, how does it know? So the door has been closed because they went in. Oh, so the door remains open when they're not in there.
Correct. They leave the door open when it's not in there.
Yeah.
So it only activates when it was closed and is now open.
Yeah, okay. Makes sense.
And so I have my mini fridge, contact sensor, left open automation, which I talked about. I have all my scenes here in the filming studio for different colors. Like these are all different smart scenes. I have scenes for movies. So when we're in the family room, going to watch something. And then the last one I'll mention, my coffee grinder. I have it on a smart plug. And there was one time I ground my bean. I started a grinding and I left the room and I forgot about it.
Yeah.
If you've ever done that, the coffee beans, it's a burr grinder. And it started overflowing, and all the ground beans got up into the burr grinder, and it was a mess. And I was like, I never want this to happen again. So with a smart plug, you can have it set. This is a built-in automation. When an accessory is controlled, so when it's turned on, wait 2 minutes. That's exactly how long it takes for it to fill the little ground thing and then be done, and then turn off. So if I turn it on from the smart plug, which every smart plug has a little button where you can manually turn it on, it waits 2 minutes and then turns the grinder off. So no matter where I go or if I forget about it, the grinder's going to turn off and I don't have to worry about it. That's
nice. Now, what about for your Apple Home setup? I mean, you use zones and rooms and all of that as well. What are some good tips for people who are trying to get that together?
I would be specific about the rooms because you can give the voice assistant, which you haven't really talked about, but I actually do use the voice assistant a lot for controlling my smart home. Be specific about the room names and what people will naturally call it.
Yeah.
So in my daughter's room, I call that room Elisa's room. And if she says, turn off Elisa's lights, it will just turn off the lights in that room. It won't turn off all the lights across the house unless the voice assistant misunderstands. And then it's, that's want to happen. But honestly, it doesn't happen as much as you would think. And so, name the rooms, what people naturally call them. That will help family members and other people in the house actually control the things, and tell people you could say lights on, you could say lights off, close the shades. One little thing is you can group devices too. So in my master bedroom, I have 2 windows. Each one has a smart shade on it. And in the Apple Home app, you can group the devices and they appear as one in the Apple Home app. So now I can press one device in the Apple Home app and it closes both shades or opens both shades. And I also will call the individual devices blinds and then the combined device shades. This way, whether my wife says close the blinds or close the shades, they'll close.
So, you got to figure that out.
Little tricks like that can help a lot.
Well, the reason I put that button on the nightstand is because I was using Siri to a HomePod. Oops, I said the word. But I was using the voice assistant to turn lights out in the bedroom when I would do the eye drops. And one time we had some friends over, and my kids and some of their friends and my wife, they were all downstairs having a great time. I went to bed, and I told the voice assistant to turn off the bedroom lights, and it turned off every light in the house. And it was a dark night, and the whole house went into darkness with people here. And that's not good. That's why I decided to use a button. I can actually force it to never make that mistake. Hanging over this whole conversation is that voice assistant and Apple's intelligence going to get better in a few months? I mean, I could see a world where Apple Home is a lot more appealing with a usable artificial intelligence.
And especially one that can create automations and scenes for you based on a voice command.
Yeah.
And this is actually something when I was at CES, I went to the Amazon booth, and Alexa Plus can actually do that.
Yeah.
So you can just say, hey, Dingus, create a scene that when I say abracadabra, all the lights in the dining room, kitchen, and living room turn on.
Yeah.
And it's smart enough to parse all that information and actually create the scene. Now, in the booth, it couldn't really tell if it actually created it accurately, but that's the promise. And I think that would help a lot, because now people could create automations just by telling their HomePod and not having to go through all the taps and actually creating it. But another tip, I do put a lot of HomeKit scenes in the control center of my iPhone, which you can put HomeKit scenes and devices there. There is actually an entire page of the control center which Apple will make just to your smart home devices, and it will intelligently change throughout the day. And I find it to be pretty good. So I have scenes for like go to bed and good night. And once it gets to later in the day or in the evening, those controls will, do that. It'll show on that control center pane. And I'm big into shortcuts. I have a lot of smart home devices plugged into different shortcut automations.
Yeah.
And that's something you can do in any shortcut. Controlling Apple Home and getting your home state, you can do in shortcuts. Even things like getting contact sensor states. So I have a shortcut where I can run it. It gets every contact sensor on every door and then shows me in quick look, here's all the doors, here's whether they're open or closed.
Yeah.
And you can basically create these like automated home reports based on, doing that in shortcuts in your contact sensor. So utilize shortcuts, control center, get some HomeKit buttons, make things easy and natural to say with the voice assistant and the HomePods. And I think you can have a good experience. It's been worth it for me. I've enjoyed it.
Did you say that you were getting a dynamic control center, that it changes the available HomeKit actions based on the time of day?
That's right. That's built in.
How do you do that?
I mean, when the control center, when it was updated in iOS 26, when it's now like customizable, if you go down and just swipe, there should just be a HomeKit control center there.
Yeah, I've got one. I set it up, but I've never seen anything change on it.
Oh, yeah, no, it changes. And you can even, you can create multiple control centers in iOS 26. And if you go to add a control, there's one called Home, where it's just like kind of a nondescript home thing.
Yeah.
And when you tap it and add it to your control center, you can then expand it to be the entire width and breadth of the control center pane. And then there's a little toggle that says Use Recommended. And if you leave that toggle on, it will just try to figure out what it is you want to control.
I must have turned that off at some point. I am a big fan. Tell me if I'm doing this right or wrong. I'm a big fan of scenes. So I've created a lot of real custom scenes. Like when I'm recording a show, I push a button and it turns a recording light over the door and does different things. And a lot of times I find scenes that have elements that spread throughout the house, for different things. I do have a scene that I want all the lights in the house to turn off on. It sometimes makes sense. I have one that turns most of them on if I hear a noise at night and I just want to go downstairs and see what's going on. So I think if you're not using scenes, that's something you should probably look into. Is that your approach too, or what do you do for that kind of problem?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I have seen, these are all my scenes. I have a bunch of them in my home, and I have some for I'm done working. It shuts off everything here in the studio.
Yeah.
I have one for I'm done recording, and so it'll raise my blackout shades that I have here. These are Eve motion blinds. I have all that. And there's scenes that I set up for my kids. So I'll ask them like, hey, what are you going to say at night that you want your room to do stuff, when you say good night? Yeah. And when you create a scene, remember, you can ask the voice assistant the scene name and it will do it. So when I'm getting ready to record, I literally do this every time I make a video. I'll say, hey, Dingus, video blue.
Yeah.
And it will set everything. Actually, I'll do it right now. Mute your devices real quick if you're listening or whatever. But if I say, hey, Siri, video blue, and you should see behind me pretty shortly, there we go. My scene turned blue. And that actually does more than just change the color. It lowers my blackout shades. It stops my ceiling fan. It does all the things in the studio ready, and actually lowers the temperature 2 degrees because it gets hot in this little room when I'm recording. And so it does all those things. And so, highly recommend setting up. Take the time and set those up. All right, so that was a ton of stuff. Listen, if you have questions, we're in the forums, the MPU forums. You can reach out at the links in the show notes. But I'm going to put so many links in the show notes. And just so you know, a lot of them are to Amazon, but they are not affiliate links. I didn't didn't want the show to feel like it was salesy. I really just love this stuff and, trying to recommend the best products out there. So if you get anything through the links in the show notes or through the email, they're not affiliates. We're not going to earn anything from that. I'm just putting the devices that I'm excited about in there. So.
Well, I'm going to be buying some, Stephen, because it's time for me to kind of get this wrangled. And you've given me a lot of good advice. I've already got a decent setup, but I want to improve upon it. I think the cameras are a big deal to the family. I'm gonna start with some of those, and I'll be up in the rafters running Ethernet the next few days.
Pay somebody to do that, David. Just pay somebody. They can do it. TaskRabbit somebody.
There you go.
Last pro tip, I will say, if you're going to do cameras and you're going to run lines to cameras, I do have a camera in my garage because every once in a while, if you have a smart garage door opener, sometimes the sensor may get confused. It thinks the door is open when it's closed and vice versa. And I like being able to pop in there and check my camera in the garage to confirm if the door is closed or not. So if you're planning on getting a bunch of cameras, maybe put one in the garage too.
Yeah. You can get an indoor camera in the garage. Those are not that expensive, and just hook it up.
Exactly. All right, we're going to record some more power users. David had an M5 MacBook Pro ordeal. I'm going to talk about my studio display and maybe some outdoor stuff, but you can get the bonus episode in an ad-free version of this and listen to our Star Wars movie ranking in the bonus feed. That's MPU Pro Max by going to relay.fm/MPU. Again, everyone who already supports the show, you got access to that monthly bonus episode as well. Thanks to our sponsors, Mercury Weather and Squarespace, and we'll catch you next time.